How's everybody doing? Great. I know I have the post-lunch hour, so that's going to be a problem, but it's okay. Thank you all for having me here. This kind of came about a little bit last minute, so I apologize for not being able to join you for the full day and yesterday. It sounds like you guys have been having a ton of fun, and you're in a really great space here, surrounded by phenomenal stories. Arts on the Block is a great program. I hope you got a chance to read those. So today I want to spend pretty much the next 20 minutes or so with you talking about the context in which we're operating in when we talk about arts integration and STEAM in particular, as it relates to the federal policy changes that have been happening in this country, about the connections between policy and practice, and ultimately what you all can do as educators, as educational leaders, as artists, or as STEM folks to help advance the conversation today. So I'm going to break, maybe? It's not on. All right, there we go. Bam. I'm going to break our session today into 3 sections so that we can all kind of get to know each other a little bit better, learn about some of the data and the policies that we have, and then talk about those advocacy measures. But before I get started, I'm just going to give you a disclaimer. I'm going to throw a ton of information at you. Really sorry about that. But there is a handout, I believe, in your bag, in your registration packet, where you can find more on everything that I'm sharing, as well as a card that I want you to fill out, and you are welcome to give back to me or mail back to us as a follow-up. So, getting started, 3 questions. First of all, who am I? Like I was introduced, my name is Jeff Poulin, and I come from an organization called Americans for the Arts. Americans for the Arts is the leading nonprofit organization for the advancement of the arts and arts education in the United States. We were founded in 1960 and had our first big advocacy victory in 1965 with the creation of the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. And ever since then, we've been working to make sure that every state and local community has an arts council that advances the arts in their area, as well as building on the advocacy infrastructure to ensure that every child has equitable access to arts education, that every community has arts funding and other arts provisions, and that ultimately our entire country is moving towards the vision of having healthy, vibrant, and equitable communities that embrace the arts and culture as a strategy to do so. But who am I? I mean, I'm here with you guys today. This was me, age 2, in my first tap dance class, and I'm very, very proud to say, though the embarrassing picture, which my mother loves, that I share, I am a direct product of arts education. I grew up in a local dance company. I spent time in a community-based theater, and I had the very distinct privilege in my community to have dance, music, theater, and visual art K through 12 in and out of school. So I recognize that I came from incredible opportunities and sit at a point of privilege. But through my upbringing, I got very involved with various initiatives in the state where I grew up, in Maine, where we use the arts to change education policy. And young people came to the state and petitioned to actually have 2 youth sit on the State Board of Education where they now sit today. Really kind of fun story about that. The first young person who ever did, he was a junior in high school. His name was Justin Chinette from Saco, Maine, and now he's actually state senator, the youngest state senator in the country, age 24 years old, and he started the state arts caucus within Congress in the state of Maine, which is really fantastic. But I moved through life and actually had some pretty early success as well. I spent some time on tour with a couple of dance companies when I was in high school, had a little bit of a non-traditional high school experience. But through that, I saw the inequities around the country, and I noticed that not every community was like the community I grew up in. I had that moment of revelation that I was not like everyone else. I didn't have the opportunities, or I had the opportunities that other students didn't have around the country. And at that point, I kind of committed to tackling these issues of equity, tackling the systems of injustice that we have in our country that do not include many students around the nation. And now I'm very, very lucky that I spend my time working for Americans for the Arts. I travel the nation. Last year I was in 48 states. I trained about 10,000 people a year to help everyone find their voice, realize their responsibility in advocating for policy change and providing the tools and resources for people to make those changes, either here in Washington, D.C., in their communities around the nation, or at the state level, which, as we all probably know, is where most education decisions are made. So that's a little bit about my story. Yeah, these are some young people I was just with in Nashville. It was really kind of cool. But I want to know who you are. So just show of hands. This is the participation post-lunch, so sorry. Raise your hand if you are a teacher that works with students every day. Or maybe not every day in the summer, but most days. Okay, raise your hand if you are like an administrator and you work on the programmatic side of things. Okay, what about a decision maker? Any education decision makers, school board members, leaders, that kind of thing? Okay, where are my science people at? Great, raise them proud, hi, yeah, there we go. We're in the Pepco, come on. What about technology? Engineering? Math? Okay, we're gonna do arts, but I'm gonna specify dance people. That's me. Yeah, dance people. What about theater people?
The what?
Theater? Great, yes. Visual art? Music? Media arts? Great, okay, we've got a good group of people in here. I really like it. I love Lillian because we see each other all the time. That's really good. And I love the collaboration that you have, and I hope you do leave this realizing that you have the power to be working together and to really change things in your own classroom or in your own community. So that's really great. So I'm going to talk to you about advocacy. We've said that word a couple of times. What do we mean? Why do we talk about advocacy?
Are you asking a question?
Yes, this is group participation.
It needs all the help it can get.
Because what?
Because it needs all the help it can get.
Because what needs all the help it can get?
The art, education.
Okay, sure. So what do we mean by advocacy?
Provide a voice.
Providing voice, absolutely. What else?
Standing up and breaking down barriers for those that can't do it themselves.
Standing up and breaking down barriers for those who can't do it themselves, absolutely. Anyone else? So that's great, and you hit on the 2 points that I always like to elevate from that conversation. The first is, we talk about advocacy because we all sit at a point where our voices are valued and listened to. Whether we believe that or not, as educators, as educational decision makers, and as administrators of educational programs, people listen to us because we are the experts about what we do. And I hope that you walk away from my talk today realizing that you have a power and what I would contend is a responsibility to share what you all need as advocates to advance arts education, STEM education, STEAM education, arts integration, whatever it is that you care about. Because 98% of elected officials and educational decision makers in this country are not experts on the thing they are deciding on. So we have to tell them what we need. Why do we talk about advocacy for policy change? Well, it goes back to the point that was shared from the woman in the back over there, that we have to be a voice for those who cannot be a voice for themselves. When we talk about advocacy for policy change, we are fighting about equitable access, meaning that we are seeking to change the policies that put up barriers for our marginalized student populations. We know that in the arts in particular, I don't have the data on STEM, but on the STEM subjects, but I know in the arts in particular, students of color are less than 2 times as likely to have access to arts education. Students that are on IEPs or that have intellectual or developmental disabilities are less than 4 times as likely to have access to arts education. Students who are English language learners are pulled out at a rate of 12 times than their English-speaking peers from their arts courses. But what we know from national data is that students from those student populations are more likely to gain exponentially from access to arts education. So I want to talk about all of those things today. At Americans for the Arts, we seek to align the federal, the state, and the local level of policy to increase that access to arts education for every student. And we contend that every person within the arts education ecosystem has an influence to make change. Whether that's going to the federal capital, whether that is going to your state decision makers, or whether that is working with your principal, superintendent, or school board in your own community, that we all can be an influencer for change in regards to what we're talking about today. So I want to share with you some of the latest data that we have and some of the policy endeavors that have come up. First, what research do we have about the arts and STEAM? Well, we've got a lot. We know that students who are engaged in the arts as part of their extended curriculum have a dropout rate of only 4% compared to their non-arts peers who have a dropout rate of 22%. We know that students who participate in arts integrated learning are more likely to score on average 100 points higher on the SAT than their non-arts peers. We know that students are more likely to do well in other areas of school. They're more likely, arts students are more likely to enter a science fair or compete in a math competition. They're more likely to graduate. They're more likely to win an award for school attendance. We know that students who participate in the arts are more likely to get jobs. They're more likely to graduate with a bachelor's degree, and they're more likely to go on to higher education. We also know that when integrating the arts into other subjects, we can help students overcome cognitive deficiencies. So I say that, and I share the story of the Harmony Project. Has anybody heard of the Harmony Project? It started in Los Angeles. It's in about 20 major metropolitan areas in the country now by a woman by the name of Margaret Martin. She's a neuroscientist from Northwestern University, and she was able to indicate the effect of poverty on the brain. So in a scaffolded lesson, a normal student who did not grow up in poverty was able to learn in a way that in lesson 1, some parts of their brain light up. In lesson 2, those same parts and more light up. In lesson 3, those same parts and more, right? That's scaffolded learning. We all understand the cognitive connection. But a student who grew up in poverty faces tremendous stress, is dealing with long-lasting effects of trauma, and the indicators show that when they learn that way in those scaffolded lessons, it first lights up in one part of the brain, then the second time in a totally separate part of the brain, and the third time in a totally separate part. However, when you integrate arts strategies into those lessons, it connects, and it returns the brain to overcome the impacts of poverty. Shocking, right? So the data is all there. On behalf of that, we also know that the American public believes that it works. We did a public opinion poll in 2015 that showed that 89%, 9 out of 10 Americans believe that the arts should be part of a well-rounded curriculum for students. And only 7% disagree with that statement. We also have done this study every 5 years, and it's been consistent since 1985. But we still have to fight with our decision makers to make sure that those provisions are there. We also asked for the first time when the arts are important at the elementary level, middle school, high school, and out of school time. And it's pretty consistent. Those same 9 out of 10 Americans believe that it should be part of the education of every student all the way through their schooling, which drives a connection to workforce development, right? But we asked specifically, do you think students in your area have enough opportunity to see plays, go to cultural events, listen to music, that kind of thing? And only about 61% agreed, which is a big drop. And when we dove deeper into that data, guess where those 61% lived? In cities. The remaining 27% lived in rural America. Not surprising. So we have more work to do, but we know that the American public is behind us. So let's go back. Let's talk about policy. Who's this guy? Can everyone see? Johnson. Who's next to him? This is my favorite piece of trivia that I share. Does anyone know who's next to him? It's not his mother. It's not Lady Bird.
Clearly not Lady.
Clearly not. I know. Someone always says it, and I'm like, she's like 30 years too old. It's one of his teachers, and they're sitting in front of his one-room schoolhouse in Johnson City, Texas, as he signed into law the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, our first piece of federal education legislation. And he did that because the entire bill, our entire federal education premise, is based on equity for students who do not have opportunity. He signed it in his hometown, signifying equity for rural students. Today, you'll notice that equity is really framed around systems of racial discrimination, language and immigrant status and justice, and programs that help students overcome obstacles like intellectual and developmental disabilities and so forth. So we know that our federal education law is grounded in equity, and it's all about kind of making sure that we're holding our decision makers accountable. This act was reauthorized several different times. Began in 1965, it was reauthorized again through sort of reauthorization in the 80s. In 1994, it was known as Improving America's Schools, or the Goals 2000 Act that we might be familiar with. 2001, No Child Left Behind, which was all about testing. And 2015, it was reauthorized as the Every Student Succeeds Act. But I want to point out to you that there have been several other forays into change of this act that directly relate to what we're talking about today. I'm not just giving you this lesson for no reason here. So, in 2013, in the 111th Congress, the Congressional STEAM Caucus was launched by Representative Aaron Schock, a Republican from Indiana, and Representative Suzanne Bonavici. This was largely staffed by folks at Rhode Island School of Design under the leadership of John Maida. He was a mathematician. He actually used to be at MIT. And he came to RISD to talk about integrated learning opportunities, and it emerged the term STEAM. They brought it to Congress, and folks from the STEM caucus, the CTE caucus, the Education caucus, the Arts caucus, everyone got together and joined this caucus. And you'll see a photo of it here, a packed room in 2013. A really great win for STEAM education. But We still didn't have a federal education law, there still wasn't money or provisions for it, and we had to keep moving forward. But in 2013, they issued a congressional resolution which specifically articulated the role of the arts and design as elements of STEM education that fostered creativity and innovation, which are two of the biggest buzzwords that any business leader that supports STEM talk about, right? You hear folks from Lockheed Martin or Boeing Company or Adobe, any of these companies, they talk about creativity and innovation, but they never talk about the arts in STEM. This was that leverage. And it continued to move forward with the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, known as the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015. Here's a photo of President Obama signing it into law. Note the difference in size of the bill from the photo with LBJ. This bill is like 2,000 pages, the other one was like 37. But you'll see standing right behind him is Suzanne Bonamici of Oregon, the state champion. And the reason she's there is because at the last second, she introduced, oh sorry, I'm gonna get into that. She introduced something very cool that I'll get to. But in the bill, there are a couple of different opportunities that I wanna highlight for you. The first is the definition of well-rounded subjects. We used to talk about core academic subjects, but I'll just give you a little piece of advice from policy land. The word core is now a 4-letter word and one should never ever use it if you want to make friends. Now we talk about well-rounded subjects, and you'll see here that we actually have writing, arts, music separated out. The arts have a broader stake in this. And we also see, no coincidence, science, technology, engineering, and math in that order. Right? The definition is 17 subjects compared to 6, but things are spelled out in a more explicit way. We also see this really fun line of any other subject as determined by state or local education agencies with the purpose of blah, 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 blah. Right? Whatever you want to do in your local district or whatever you want to pass in your state, you're able to do. Upside down painting, make it a discipline. That's great. I'm totally into it, right? It provides so much more opportunity for state and local education authorities to make decisions that enhance arts integration and STEAM learning. We also saw an authorization of new federal money, and I will just say that again, new federal money for the first time since 1981 for education that actually goes in a block grant to states, which is then dispersed by student population to districts to fill in gaps where well-rounded education isn't currently happening. So if in your district you've never had STEAM, starting this September, you will have the opportunity to participate in a needs assessment and say, we want funds to help integrate the arts and STEM subjects in our school from Title IV Part A.
Does it give it to the District of Columbia since we're not a state?
Yes, you can get a state board, you have a state board of education, therefore you are eligible for federal funds. So this is a big, big opportunity. And you can actually read more about this on our website and find out how much your state would actually get. But, like I was talking about Suzanne Bonamici, at the last second when they were passing this bill, it was at the full House of Representatives. She added in an amendment which reads, integrating other academic subjects, including the arts, into STEM programs to increase participation in STEM, improve attainment of STEM-related skills, and promote well-rounded education. It got the confirmation of every member of the House of Representatives. I will just say that again. Every single member of the House of Representatives. Name me a time in the past 10 years that has actually happened, right? It doesn't happen. So if you have nothing in common with your elected officials, you can tell them thank you for voting for STEAM. Anyways, what it did is the bill says 211 times the word STEM. This says that every time it says STEM, it actually means STEAM. And then, building on this momentum, we come to just last week when the Representative Langevin from Rhode Island put in a bill called the STEM to STEAM Act of 2017. This bill redirects funds from the National Science Foundation that were focused towards STEM explicitly to be STEAM related. Because one of the things that has come out of all of these different pieces is that we have the policy, but we do not know what effective practice or evaluation models or professional development really look like. We know, but we don't know in terms of law. So this bill helps to close that gap. So that's when I want to turn to advocacy and the things that are actually happening that are working on that gap. Because we know connecting policy to practice is the biggest barrier anytime something happens in federal law. Not only connecting it from federal to state to local, but connecting the dollars to the right places they need to go, the effective models through evaluation or professional development, to be funded, and to make sure that we are actually advancing things in the right way. And this, again, I contend, is our responsibility to tell our decision makers as the most knowledgeable people on the ground doing this work. So a couple of things have happened. RISD launched a STEAM map. This was an effort of connecting the field of practice of STEAM together. So you can actually go on stem2steam.com and put in an organizational profile. You see there's one lonely person in Halifax, Nova Scotia that's working on it. And 104 different people in Florida, and 3,000 in New England, and 217, it looks like the Midwest there. And you can talk to each other. You can connect with each other, read about their programs, look at their website, check out what they're doing. This was a great step. This happened in 2014. Then in 2015, an organization called the Innovation Collaborative was born, which is a collective of about 160 different organizations. Americans for the Arts is one of the founders, along with the National Science Teachers Association, the Association of Science Technology Centers and the Out of School Time, the National Libraries Association, all sorts of folks on the national level got together and wanted to network together the arts, sciences, and humanities education to figure out this connection between policy and practice. And what they did is they convened a set of what we call research thought leaders, which are some of the smartest people in neuroscience, in the arts, James Catterall, in out-of-school time learning, Bobby Bernstein, Hubert Diassi, he directed the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab research. I mean, these are really, really cool people that came together and looked at different frameworks of evaluating professional development and how we actually teach pedagogically in the classroom. And through their research, we were able to conduct two different types of research. One about out-of-school time and one about in-school time on effective practices of networking standards, pedagogy, and evaluation in the arts, sciences, and humanities. And the first set in K-12 is being released right now in the Journal of Science Education, and the out-of-school time is actually occurring. So if you work in the out-of-school time in STEAM, I encourage you to participate before the end of summer. But the University of Florida is conducting this research, and we'll be putting out models of effective practice in professional development, in lesson plans, and in evaluation methods starting this fall. So finally connecting that policy to practice. And lastly, Americans for the Arts in our role has been looking at the policy side of things. Now that we've had this momentum federally, we're launching a study just in 2 weeks looking at state-level implicit and explicit policies that support STEAM learning. So implicit policies, the funding measures, the professional development offered by state arts councils, state science councils, state humanities councils, and state education agencies. We're looking at the explicit policies, is it in code anywhere? And if it is in code, how do we tell the rest of the states what that code looks like so that we can replicate it around the nation? Connecting that federal to state to local policy pipeline. We also provide tools and resources for advocates at the local level, specifically around STEAM. So you can make your case using our messaging tools, using our personal advocacy tools, and using all of our one-sheets, videos, and different handouts that aggregate research together. And lastly, STEAM has become a platform of the Arts Action Fund, and this is kind of your tangible takeaway for the day. I would encourage everybody here and invite you to sign up to be part of the 1 million member army that we are assembling to advance opportunities for arts and cultural learning, as well as arts and culture in communities around the nation. The Arts Action Fund is a nonpartisan 501c4 organization or a political action committee. It's a PAC. I know some people have reservations about PACs, and I share that with you. But as far as I'm concerned, if Big Pharma and Big Oil have PACs, arts and culture needs it too. And the Arts Action Fund is assembling that 1 million member army to kind of move forward an agenda, which obviously maintains the National Endowment for the Arts, but also maintains well-rounded education and fully funding the law, which opens up all of these opportunities for STEAM learning that I've been talking about. Right now, Congress is going through a budget process where they are not fully funding the law, which is a problem. They're backing down on their word that in their commitment that they made in 2015. So we work to elect a pro-arts Congress. We support to the federal allowed capacity Representative Bonamici, our STEAM champion in Oregon, and now the Republican who co-chairs the caucus, Representative Stefanik in upstate New York, who's also 34 and will be a very long-serving member of Congress, I think. And so we really invite everybody to join, because as these things come up, when the STEM to STEAM Act comes to a vote, every member of the Arts Action Fund will receive an email to tell their legislator to please vote yes on that. If it goes through committee, if you have to put in your zip code, so if your home aligns with the district of someone who is on that committee, you will get an email to please nudge them in the right direction. It's a really, really easy way to be an advocate at the national level. And of course, all of our tools and resources are geared towards advocacy at the state and local levels as well, because we know that only about 10% of education decisions happen here in the nation's capital, and the rest happen within your state decision-making bodies and local decision-making bodies. So with that, I come to a close, and I thank you for listening and letting me talk at you for a few minutes this afternoon. But I will, if we have a second, take any questions from all of the information that I just threw at you today. Yeah?
Contact information.
Sure, you can, it should be on the handout that you have in your thing, but you can find it at americansforthearts.org. Any of the arts ed pages, my picture is there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Those statistics you gave before were just, I thought, astounding about the people that engage in the arts and how much better they do. Would we get a copy of that? I mean, I'm flabbergasted that in all stuff I've read, I've never seen that.
So we have two different things. One, we have our policy and research database on our website. You can check arts education and pull up everything from the 1960s through today. That might be a little bit overwhelming, so to help with that, we've actually published an ebook that is available in the resources that you have in your packet that's called Facts and Figures, and we've curated the top 50 facts and figures that resonate most with decision makers like principals, school board members, business leaders, and funders. And those are beautifully designed by a graphic artist in an ebook layout with live links to the studies where they come from. So you can just read that book real quick. Any other questions? Fantastic. Well, oh,
Are
yeah.
you going to stay around so that you can talk individually with people? We have a policy roundtable, so if you would love to stay with us, then we would love to have you join us for the roundtable.
Yes, let me look at my schedule. But yes, I appreciate it. But I will say, please do get in touch. AmericansDRs.org is where you can find our information and let us know any thoughts that you might have. But again, thank you so much for having me here today, and I wish you the best conference.
Thank you so much.